The dust hadn't settled on Main Street in 3 days. It swirled around the wooden buildings of Redemption Falls like a restless spirit, coating everything in a fine layer of grit that made the town look older than its 15 years. Through this haze walked a figure that would have been unrecognizable to anyone who knew James Big Jim Caldwell, the wealthiest rancher in 3 territories. The man who pushed through the door of Rosie's diner looked nothing like the cattle baron who owned half the valley. His boots were scuffed beyond repair, his denim pants were patched at both knees, and his shirt had seen better decades. A battered hat sat low on his weathered face, and 3 days of stubble completed the disguise. Only his eyes, sharp and calculating as ever, remained unchanged, though he kept them carefully downcast. Big Jim had his reasons for this charade. At 52, he'd built an empire from nothing, fought off rustlers and drought, and amassed more wealth than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But wealth had brought him a particular kind of loneliness. Everyone wanted something from him, a loan, a job, a piece of his success. He could never tell who saw him as a person and who saw him as a walking bank vault. Then there was the matter of his son's upcoming wedding. The young woman his boy had chosen came from a working family in town, and her sister worked right here at Rosie's diner. Big Jim had heard conflicting reports about this sister. Some said she was kind, others said she was shrewd. He'd decided to find out for himself before his family became forever entwined with hers. The diner was nearly empty in the late afternoon lull. An old-timer nursed coffee in the corner, and a young couple whispered over shared pie near the window. Behind the counter, a woman in her late 20s wiped down the already clean surface with methodical care. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her calico dress, though faded from washing, was spotless and pressed. Big Jim shuffled to the counter and eased himself onto a stool with an exaggerated groan. He let his shoulders slump, the posture of a man beaten down by hard times. The woman looked up, and her face broke into a warm smile that reached her green eyes. "Afternoon, sir. Welcome to Rosie's. What can I get for you today?" "Just coffee, ma'am," Big Jim mumbled, his voice roughened to a rasp. "If it ain't too much trouble." "No trouble at all. That's what I'm here for. Here." She poured him a generous cup from a fresh pot, steam rising in the slanted afternoon light. "Cream or sugar?" "Black's fine. How much?" 5 cents. Big Jim made a show of fishing through his pockets, finally producing a small handful of coins. He counted them slowly on the counter. 4 cents. His face fell in a performance worthy of a traveling theatre troupe. "I'm mighty sorry, ma'am. Thought I had more. I can just—" He started to push the cup away. The woman, her name tag read Sarah, waved her hand dismissively. "Don't you worry about that penny. Coffee's on the house today." She noticed his gaunt expression, the way his clothes hung loose. "When's the last time you had a proper meal?" Big Jim had eaten a steak the size of a saddle blanket just that morning, but he answered, "Been a spell, I reckon." Sarah's brow furrowed with concern. "You sit tight." Without waiting for a response, she disappeared into the kitchen. Big Jim sipped his coffee, which was surprisingly good, and watched through the service window as Sarah spoke animatedly with the cook, a stout woman with flour on her apron. 5 minutes later, Sarah emerged with a plate piled high with pot roast, potatoes, carrots, and 2 thick slices of bread. The aroma made Big Jim's mouth water, despite his earlier meal. "I can't pay for this," he protested weakly. "Did I ask you to?" Sarah set the plate before him with a gentle firmness. "Everyone deserves a hot meal, mister. What's your name?" "Jim," he said, keeping it simple. "Just Jim." "Well, just Jim. You eat up. And there's more if you're still hungry." As Big Jim ate, and he had to admit Rosie's pot roast rivaled anything his own ranch cook made, Sarah moved about her duties. But he noticed she kept glancing his way, refilling his coffee without being asked, bringing extra bread. When the old-timer in the corner left without tipping, she just smiled and cleared his table without complaint. The young couple finished their pie and approached the counter to pay. Big Jim overheard their quiet conversation. "Sarah, I'm real sorry," the young man said, his ears reddening. "I thought I had enough, but we're short about 20 cents. Big Jim watched Sarah carefully. This was a true test. These were people her own age, not some desperate drifter. Sarah's smile never wavered. "You know what? I made a mistake on the bill. My arithmetic's terrible today." She crossed out the total and wrote a new number that matched exactly what they had. "There we go, all settled." The couple left with grateful smiles, and Sarah went back to wiping the already spotless counter. Big Jim pushed his empty plate away. He'd eaten every bite. "That was mighty fine, Mom. Best meal I've had in, well, longer than I care to remember." "I'm glad." Sarah's smile was genuine, warm. "Where are you headed, Jim? You look like you've been on the road a while." "Nowhere in particular. Thought I might find work around these parts." "What kind of work do you do?" "Ranching mostly. Worked cattle all my life. Horses too." "All true, just incomplete." Sarah's eyes lit up. "You know, the Caldwell ranch is always looking for hands. It's about 5 miles north of town. Big Jim Caldwell runs it. He's supposed to be fair, pays decent wages. You might try there." Big Jim nearly choked on his coffee. "You know him, this Caldwell fellow?" "Not personally, but his son's engaged to my sister, Emily. From what Emily says, the family's good people. Proud, maybe a bit too concerned with money and appearances, but good-hearted underneath." She paused, then added quietly, "Emily worries sometimes that they'll look down on us. We don't come from much, and our papa died last year, left us with more debts than assets. Your sister's worried they'll judge her?" "Some. But I tell her if they're truly good people, they'll see her for who she is. Kind, smart, devoted. And if they can't see that—" Sarah shrugged. "Then maybe they're not the right family for her anyway." "That's wise thinking. It's just honest thinking." Sarah refilled his cup again. "People are more than their bank accounts. Some of the richest folks I've met had the poorest spirits, and some of the poorest folks had hearts rich as gold mines." Big Jim studied her face, looking for any sign of calculation, any hint that her kindness was performance. He found none. "What about you? You must meet all kinds here." "I do, and I'll tell you the truth. The ones who treat me kindest are usually the ones who've known hard times themselves. They remember what it's like to be hungry, to be down on their luck. The ones born to wealth." She paused, then smiled apologetically. "Listen to me, going on. You didn't come here for philosophy." "No, ma'am, but I'm finding it mighty interesting all the same." The door chimed, and a well-dressed man entered. Big Jim recognized him as Harold Pembroke, a banker he'd had dealings with. Big Jim tensed, but Pembroke barely glanced at the shabby figure at the counter before calling out, "Sarah, service please. I don't have all day." Sarah's smile remained in place, though Big Jim saw a slight tightening around her eyes. "Coming right up, Mr. Pembroke." She served the banker with the same courtesy she'd shown everyone else, even when he complained about the coffee temperature, sent back his eggs twice, and left without tipping. When he'd gone, she just shook her head and laughed softly. "Every town's got one," she said to Jim. "Can't let them steal your peace. You ever get tired of it? The thankless work, the poor pay?" Sarah considered this, really considered it. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but then I think about my mama. She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed after Papa's first accident. She used to say that work is not just about what you take home, it's about who you become while you're doing it. Mean work makes you mean, but if you can keep your kindness while working hard." She shrugged. "That's worth something, isn't it?" Big Jim found himself genuinely moved. "Your mama sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was. Died when I was 19. 5 years now, but I still hear her voice sometimes." Sarah's eyes glistened, but her smile remained. She'd have given you 3 meals, not just one, and probably packed you a bag for the road. Big Jim made his decision. He stood slowly, as befitting his character. Sarah, I want to thank you. You've restored my faith in something today. In what? In people, I suppose. In kindness for its own sake. She laughed, a bright sound. You're welcome, though I didn't do anything special, just fed a hungry man. That's where you're wrong, ma'am. You did something very special indeed. He tipped his battered hat. I'll be going now, but I suspect we'll meet again. I hope so, Jim, and truly try the Caldwell Ranch for work. Tell them Sarah at Rosie's sent you. Emily will make sure they treat you fair. Big Jim walked out into the dusty street, his mind churning. He'd come to test Sarah to see if she was worthy of joining his family. What he'd found was a young woman who'd tested him without knowing it, and he was not entirely sure he'd measured up to her standards. The next morning, Big Jim Caldwell, dressed in his finest suit, clean-shaven and unmistakable, walked into Rosie's diner with his son Thomas and the boy's fiancée, Emily. Sarah looked up from pouring coffee and her eyes went wide. You were... I was, Big Jim confirmed, and I apologize for the deception. I wanted to know what kind of person was joining our family. Sarah's face flushed red, then pale. Emily grabbed her sister's hand, looking worried. Big Jim continued, What I found was someone who showed kindness without condition, generosity without expectation, and dignity without pride. He pulled an envelope from his pocket and placed it on the counter. Inside is a bank draft, enough to clear your father's remaining debts and set up a trust for your future. Sarah stared at the envelope like it might bite. I can't accept this. I didn't help you expecting... I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm offering it. Big Jim's stern face softened into something approaching a smile. You told me yesterday that people are more than their bank accounts. You were right, but you're also more than a waitress in a dusty town, Sarah. You're exactly the kind of person I hope my son has learned to value, the kind of family I'm proud to join with mine. Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks. Emily hugged her sister tight. There's one condition, Big Jim added, and Sarah's face fell slightly. You come to Sunday dinner every Sunday, and you tell me when I'm being an old fool. From what I've learned, you're not afraid to speak truth, and a man in my position needs that. Sarah laughed through her tears. I can do that, Mr. Caldwell. Call me Jim. Just Jim. And from that day forward, Rosie's Diner had a new regular customer every Sunday afternoon before family dinner. A wealthy rancher who never failed to tip generously always ordered the pot roast, and who'd learned that true gold isn't measured in what a person has, but in what they freely give away.